My bully is effing my wife. So I made her choose, him or me. My, 26, wife, Becca, 26, her best friend, Daria, 26, and I all went to high school together, but I ran in a very different social circle. They played sports and were decently well known / popular. I was really into art and computers, chubby with an awkward haircut. We all went to a really large high school, so it was more that I knew of them rather than actually knowing them. Becca and Daria have been best friends since they were really young. They both moved into the same neighborhood in preschool and their parents are very close. In high school, there was a guy, Chris, 26, who would regularly bully me. There was a name that Chris and his friends called me based on a thing that happened during my sophomore year. It was essentially a trap that Chris and friends had set up so that I would be embarrassed and they could pretend I had done it to myself. I feel like I'm already doing a bad job hiding my identity, so let's just say that the name was Stinky. I hated it. They called me this all the time and made me the butt of many of their jokes. Chris was very popular and was friends with Becca and Daria in high school. Chris was good looking, wealthy, and he knew it. He walked around like he was untouchable. Insert all of the wealthy, athletic, good-looking stereotypes that you want here, they pretty much all rang true for him. I hated him and hated any time that I had to be around him. I know that a lot of people face some really violent bullying, so I don't want it to make it sound like I was physically tortured, but I did feel like I was relentlessly harassed. I was very thankful and excited to get out of my hometown and away from those people when I went to college. I don't know if it was growing up and growing into myself, the ability to reset my identity, or just getting away from bullies, but I really found myself in college. I'm still a bit nerdy and artistic, but I grew into my body. I started making friends and realized that I had something to offer the world. I rapidly became a lot more confident and comfortable socially. Becca and I ended up going to the same college a few hours away, but she didn't have a car. I offered her a ride home for Thanksgiving break, and it became a habit of riding together for breaks and chatting about life in school. We started to become friends and our friend group started to combine. In sophomore year, our talks became deeper and more personal. I realized I was into her on the way home for Christmas and asked her on a date over break. We've now been together almost 7 years, engaged for the last year. We have a strong relationship, communicate well, go on regular dates and trips, and have supported each other through numerous ups and downs. We have had our fights over the years and even did some counseling together for about a year. I was bringing my parents' passive-aggressive style of fighting into our relationship, and she was assuming I was criticizing her all the time because of her mom's crappy behavior. We've found those times to be challenging but helpful in the long run. I love this woman and I'm excited to get married and spend our lives together. Becca and Daria reconnected after college and now own a business together that plans events and helps connect people and businesses to local food, drinks, and experiences. Their business really took off in the year before the virus, and they've been slowly but steadily growing back as things have been opening up. They have started to enter into a number of exclusive contracts with event spaces and restaurants/breweries. In a market where things can turn quickly, these deals are super important to them as they provide a lot of security for their company. Becca came home about 2 months ago really excited about a new brewery exploring an exclusive deal. About a week later, the brewery signed and there was a dinner to celebrate. Becca asked if I want to come and meet the team from the brewery. She told me that I might have met the owner before, but I guess I didn't think to ask who it was because I didn't know who it was going into the dinner. If you're still with me, you can probably guess who the brewery owner is. I was sitting at the table with Becca waiting for the rest of the group to arrive when Chris came through the door, walked up to the table, greeted Becca and then turned to me and said, "Hi Stinky." I was immediately confused and angry. She knew that I knew Chris and she knew that he had harassed me throughout high school. She didn't mention at any point prior that he was the owner of the brewery and that she was working closely with him. I got through dinner, but on the way home, when I asked why she didn't tell me, she blew it off as though it was water under the bridge, that I had changed and I should understand that Chris had changed too. I was still upset but tried to let bygones be bygones. Over the next couple of weeks, it was clear that Daria and Chris were becoming romantically involved with each other. Becca and I usually spend 2/3 nights a week with Daria, whether going out or simply watching TV at our house or hers. We often joke that we're a throuple, but to be clear, that is not the case and what we have is strictly platonic. Over the last month or so, Chris started showing up to nights out and even came over one night to Daria's house when we were hanging it and watching TV. I've tried to be open to a new Chris, but he seems like he's the same overly macho, trying hard to be alpha jerk he was all those years ago. I tried to bring up to Becca that the casual relationship between Daria and Chris is probably not good for their business. While Becca agreed, she felt like she couldn't tell her friend to not date or sleep with someone. Last week, Becca invited me along to an industry event. I got there to unfortunately find Chris is there as well. I try to be friendly and nice. We get a table for the 4 of us and have some drinks and food. At one point, the girls leave to network with a couple of potential clients. Out of nowhere, Chris starts talking about how this event might be a good place for him and Daria to find a woman to have a threesome with. Caught completely off guard, I ask him what he's talking about and he says that him and Daria want to have another threesome and that I should know all about that. I was super confused and asked what he was talking about, and he proceeds to tell me that him, Daria and Becca had a couple of threesomes in high school and that he figured that I was having threesomes with the 2 girls as well. I felt blindsided and didn't know what to say. When we got home, Becca already knew I was upset about something and asked me what was wrong. I told her about what Chris had said and she tried to deny it at first but then told me that it was partially true. What Becca told me was that Daria and Chris were FWBs for a bit at the end of senior year / right before college. Chris and Daria spent a few weeks talking with her about having a threesome with them, but she was on the fence. At a party when everyone was tipsy it was brought up again and she went to a bedroom with them. Note for mods, they were all 18 at the time. They all stripped down and did a lot of kissing/touching, but Becca backed out of having intimacy and instead watched them. On Thanksgiving break of freshman year, the three talked about going all the way with it but ended up not being able to find a free time for all of them. Daria then got a boyfriend and it was never brought up again. All of this was news to me. In addition to not really coming into myself until college, I was a late bloomer in terms of relationships. Becca was my first everything. I knew and wasn't upset that she had had intimacy before us, but we had never really gone into the when or who of that. Becca keeps saying that I never asked and she never lied about all this, but, especially with doing business with Chris, it feels like lying by omission to me. I'm struggling with all this. Chris did his best to make my life awful in high school and now is back. Almost every time I spent time with him, he seems to be belittling me, making fun of me. He even told Becca in front of me that she could do better than me and was dating down. She told me later that it was just a joke and stop being so sensitive. It seems like this threesome/intimacy thing is just one more thing he can hold over me. He's a snake and always seems to say the worst stuff to me when Becca and Daria are just out of earshot. We've been arguing about this situation for about a week now. I asked Becca to cut all contact with him last night. She told me I was being unreasonable. He's with her best friend and they all do business together. I asked if it was that Daria and her Nita's Brewery's contract. She keeps asking me why I can't move on and accept that Chris is a different person.